following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Yo, Philly! How you's doing? Welcome to Philadelphia Baseball, past, present, and personal. I'm Bill Kashatus, your host on the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. Now, though this podcast is dedicated to Philadelphia baseball, many listeners are also Eagles fans, and I'd have to be crazy to let this week go by without dedicating this program to our birds. As we all know, last week, the Chicago Bears helped the Eagles clinch the sixth seed in the NFL playoffs by defeating the Vikings in Minnesota. But this Sunday at 4:40 p.m., the Birds will square off against those very same Bears at Chicago's Soldier Field. Will this be the first of 4 postseason games for our Birds that will lead to a return to the Super Bowl to defend their NFL title? Or will the Bears, who gave it last week, take it away on Sunday? On this podcast, we're going to give you a preview of the Eagles-Bears wild card game. My guest is Chicago sports historian Bill Vaselopulos. Bill and I will take a look back at the playoff history between the Eagles and Bears, review each team's season, and break down the offense, defense, and special teams as we prepare for the wild card round. Welcome back to the podcast, Lopo.
Thank you, Bill. Good to talk to you again. Looking forward to this.
Yeah, what's the weather like out there in Chicagoland? We going to have another fog ball on Sunday?
I kind of wish we would. Or maybe, 10 degrees, maybe 10 below. But unfortunately, it's going to be unseasonably warm. The forecast for tomorrow, Friday, Saturday, Sunday is going to be in the 40s.
That's wonderful.
It's going to be actually perfect football weather. There could be some rain in the forecast Sunday night. And that, depending on how the weather is, that could bleed into the latter part of the game. It could, start at the latter part of the game or not, but I think it's going to be great football weather, not necessarily freezing cold. But you know what? The Eagles are used to playing in cold weather too. They're an outdoor team, so no big deal there.
Well, I certainly hope it turns out better for the Eagles than the last fog ball. And I do want to start this podcast by doing a brief review of the Eagles-Bears playoff history, which in our lifetime would date pretty much to 1979. But let's start with the last time the Bears and the Eagles faced off in the playoffs, which was January 19th, 2002 in Chicago. The Bears had a regular season record of 13-3, and they were the number 2 seed. Eagles, who were 11-5 during the regular season, came in as underdogs after beating Tampa Bay 31-9 in the wild card round. The experts said that the Bears defense, led by future Hall of Famer Brian Urlacher, would be too strong for the Eagles to overcome. But Donovan McNabb, who, by the way, is a Chicago area native, went crazy. He passed for 262 yards and 2 touchdowns and ran for a third. He did throw 1 interception, a pick 6 that was taken for 39 yards into the end zone by cornerback Jerry Azuma, which gave Chicago a temporary 14-13 lead in the third quarter. The Birds also had 4 field goals by David Akers and ended up defeating the Bears 33-19. Any memories?
Oh, well, yeah, bad memories. Thanks for bringing that up. you described it accurately. I mean, the Bears had the stronger defense. But in hindsight, when you look back, as I have done in preparation, as have you, if you look at the two offenses, the Eagles' offense had some really good players on that team. McNabb went crazy. Deuce Staley, he was a decent running back. And the Bears, they had two quarterbacks that played in that game. Jim Miller, who was okay, was the starter, but was knocked out of the game. And Shane Matthews came in for the majority of the game. He was never a great backup. They had decent running backs, but they couldn't get anything going on the run game. And, the offense just kind of faltered. Obviously, the Bears' defense was supposed to be the strength of the team, but McNabb picked them apart. And before you know it, it was 33-19, and the Bears were one and done, which was a great disappointment. What I do also remember about that game is and this is with all these games, really, the Fog Bowl and this 2002 playoff game, is the connection between the Bears and the Eagles. And in this game, it was, as you pointed out, Donovan McNabb. McNabb was, if I remember correctly, he was the quarterback here he grew up in Chicago, played quarterback for the local juggernaut football team in the city, Mount Carmel High School. They won state numerous times under his leadership. He was voted, Mr. Illinois football player of the high school football player of the year. So this was, and he was a Bears fan. So him coming home, under this backdrop of the playoff game was a big deal. And boy, did he stick it to the hometown fans. So that's what I remembered from that game. It was really disappointing because the Bears were the favorite team with the stronger defense, but it sure didn't show on that day.
Well, 14 years earlier, we had our heartbreaker at Soldier Field. That was the Fog Bowl, December 31st, 1988. The Eagles back then were coached by another Chicago contact, the colorful Buddy Ryan, and the Birds went 10-6 in the regular season. It was the Eagles' first appearance in the postseason since 1981, and it was an afternoon game in 25-degree weather. The fog rolled in during the second quarter, cutting visibility to about 15 to 20 yards for the rest of the game, although the referees didn't admit to that and kept the game going. The Bears, who had posted a regular season record of 12-4, took a first quarter lead when quarterback Mike Tomczyk threw a 64-yard bomb to receiver Dennis McKinnon, who took it into the end zone. Tomczyk, I believe, had replaced Jim McMahon as the starting quarterback during the regular season. He left Tomczyk has left the game in the third quarter with a shoulder injury, but by that time the Bears and head coach Mike Ditka had a 17-9 lead. Now, our quarterback, Randall Cunningham, had a wonderful game. I mean, he passed for 407 yards despite that poor visibility, but he couldn't do anything in the red zone. In fact, all the Eagles' points came off the foot of Luis Zendejas, our kicker, who hit or converted on 4 field goals. The Bears won that game 20-12, but they would lose the following week to the Redskins 28-3 in the NFC title game, and I believe that was for the second year straight. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And it was a big disappointment when they lost against the Redskins. That was another home game. And Green, I forgot his first name, but that the cornerback intercepted a pass and ran it back for a touchdown, and really was a backbreaker for the Bears in that game. But the Fog Bowl, that was that was memorable for one obvious reason. You didn't see a damn thing.
Yeah.
What's your recollection of the game? Well, the recollection of the game is you didn't see the game. And as you said, it was really in the second half. the first half, the visibility was fine. There was really no inkling, and nor was there a anticipated fog, if I remember correctly, that would be coming in. No one expected that. It wasn't in the forecast. But Soldier Field is right along Lake Michigan, and if the conditions are right, the lake is going to create a fog. And sure enough, in the second half, it started happening at the beginning of the first half, and then at the second half, the announcers came back. It was Vernon Lundquist, and at the beginning of the third quarter, he starts to announce the game, and it's comical. He's saying, the ball's been handed off, and it's on the left side of the field. And that was it. He didn't know where. He knew it was a running play, and he knew it was on the left side of the field because he really couldn't see that side of the field. He had no idea what happened. And there are a couple of funny stories that have come out of this, as I've learned. One, and what was the only way we as fans, and I was not at the game, I was watching it on TV, we knew anything that was going on in the second half was that the head official would get on his microphone after every single play, and he would say, running play for 3 yards, 2nd down and 7.
Wow.
The next play, a pass for 4 yards, 3rd down and 3. And now at least you had an idea of what had happened, what type of play we'd run, and what the down and distance was. Otherwise, the television announcers had no clue. Now, the visibility was about 20 yards, so in the middle of the field, you could make things out. It took away the downfield passing, but you could run plays and you could do some short passes. And you knew that only because when they approached the goal line, the end zone cameras at the field level, you could see the plays occurring in the last 5 or to 10 to 5 yards as they're approaching the end zone. But beyond that, you couldn't. And one other funny anecdote about that game, Brent Musburger, the very famous commentator, was doing the pre- and post-game shows for that game, and he was on site. So Vernon Lundquist is up in the press box, and he can't see a thing. And the producers were miking up Musburger to maybe take over the play-by-play if he could stand on the sidelines and get a better view. And he went over there, and he's like, guys, I can only see pretty much to half the field. I can't see the other half of the field. And you could see that in the camera depictions, that the cameras behind the Bears' sidelines could not see the Eagles' sideline at all. I mean, that's how bad it was. So Musburger never did that play-by-play. They just relied on the referee, and pretty much the game was over at halftime because the Bears were ahead, and each team only scored one field goal in the second half. And the final score, as you said, was 20-12, and that was it. So it was.
Yeah, my memory of that game. We here in Philadelphia, we have this belief that all the national broadcasters have it out for us, so we don't listen to the play-by-play on the TV. We have the TV on, but we turn down the volume and listen to the Eagles broadcasters, Merrill Reese and now Mike Quick. Although Quick might have been playing in that game back then, but Merrill Reese, all I could remember, he's a homer, a real homer. He's beloved here, but he is a homer, and he kept on saying the entire game, "It is thick as pea soup out there. I don't understand why the refs don't call this game or at least let the fog settle." And he was going on and on and on about it. The other thing that was so interesting for me about that was that Ryan had just been in Philadelphia a couple of years. He had been Mike Ditka's defensive coordinator in 1985-86 when the Bears won Super Bowl 20 against who else but the New England Patriots by a very convincing 46-10 margin. So that was another thing that really stayed out with me.
There was that connection between the two, and it was really animosity and jealousy that fueled that rivalry. While Ryan was with Ditka, with the Bears, that was going on. So now with Ryan with the Eagles, he wanted to prove that he was just as good or better head coach than Ditka, which is what he thought. all along. And there was another interesting Bears-Eagles connection. Todd Bell, the safety for the Bears, who held out during that Super Bowl year, thinking because he was a starter and he thought he had a lot of leverage. If you want to win the Super Bowl, you're going to want to pay me. It was his thinking. Bears never succumbed to his demands. He sat the whole year, and boy, was Todd Bell pissed. So here is the team wins the whole thing. He leaves. He's let go by the Bears after that, and he follows Buddy Ryan to the Eagles.
I remember.
Todd Bell intercepts a pass during the Fog Bowl game in the first half where you could see it. I think it was in the first quarter. And he's taunting the Bears sideline, and Ditka in particular, after he's intercepted the pass. So you could just see the rivalry just, bubbling to the surface there in the middle of the game. It was quite interesting.
Yeah, Ryan was an amazing guy. I mean, he, if you remember, had bounties out on different offensive players, and he had guys like Seth Joyner, Reggie White, Jerome Allen, people who were, they were mean, could be really mean players, and the league finally put a stop to all that. But he could be arrogant as well as really vengeful. Last game I want to look at is December 23rd, 1979, the wild card round here at Philadelphia's Veterans Stadium, which is no longer. Both Dick Vermeil's Eagles, who were 12-5, and Neil Armstrong's Bears, not the astronaut, who were 10-7, finished second in their respective divisions that season. Chicago was led by quarterback Mike Phipps and running back, who can ever forget him, Walter Payton. Payton rushed for 2 touchdowns, and kicker Bob Thomas added a 30-yard field goal, but it wasn't enough because the Birds, led by the Polish rifle, Ron Jaworski, connected with Harold Carmichael for 2 touchdowns and Billy Campbell for a third. Kicker Tony Franklin added 2 field goals, and the Eagles walked away 27-17 winners. Of course, the Birds went on to lose to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 24-17 the following week in the NFC title game. So what we're talking about right now is that series is at 2-1 for the Eagles, 1-2 for the Bears. You think it's going to be evened up on Sunday?
Yes.
We'll get to that. Why don't we move on to the reviewing the seasons, and I'll let you start. Tell us about the Bears 2018 season, Lopo.
The 18 season has been a shock to many Bear fans. Coming off of 2 consecutive years in last place in the Bears division. Their rebirth really has started with the new general manager, Ryan Pace, who actually came on board 4 years ago, but was brought in because the previous general managers had really failed in the draft. And Ryan Pace did not start out all that well in his first draft himself. His number 1 pick, wide receiver White, broke his leg, and then the next year broke his other leg, but he has been injured for 3 years in a row, Kevin White, and has been a real failure. But the subsequent 3 drafts, he has not only hit it on the first round draft pick, but the key to most drafts and most teams' successes occur when you have strong middle round draft picks, and Pace has really done that really well in the last 3 drafts. So he has drafted not just quality players who start, but in some cases are at the top of their position and Pro Bowl caliber type of guys. So that has been one thing. He brought in John Fox, the coach, to kind of change the culture and become more defensive-minded, again, go back to the original roots of the Bears. But after 3 years, they determined John Fox was not the right fit. He was too old-fashioned. He was too he he just wasn't innovative enough, and would rely on other people to run the offense. And those guys, if they were successful, would then leave for a head coaching job. So there was constant turmoil on the offense. But he did build a pretty good defense. Back in those days, the Bears' offense was dependent upon Jay Cutler, which turned out to be a big mess because he had all the physical tools, but I think he was too confident, and his head thought he could do more than his body could do, and he would throw and make ill-advised throws, interceptions, turn the ball over frequently, and that didn't work out very well. So Ryan Pace cut Cutler, brought in Trubisky. And this year, I think, even though this is Trubisky's second year on the team, I still call Trubisky a rookie. And the reason I call him a rookie is he only played 9 games last year. He didn't start the season in his true rookie year. He had only played 6 games in college the year before that. And now this season, his second professional season, he's under a brand new, highly complicated offense with the new head coach, Matt Nagy. So in many ways, he is a rookie. So not a lot of people, I think, expected much out of him as he's learning a new offense for the second year in a row. And Nagy, the new head coach, is learning what the capabilities of Trubisky are. So that started the season, I think, with low expectations. But shortly before the season starts, Ryan Pace makes a huge trade and gets Khalil Mack, a top defensive linebacker technically, but he lines up, he's the outside linebacker on a 3-4 defense, and he rushes constantly, and brought him in. And it's amazing what one person can do to an entire team. Now, the defense was a top 10 defense before they traded for Khalil Mack. But now they've elevated themselves to a top 2 or 3 defense in all of football. And his abilities are contagious. Not only, he's not a rah-rah guy, but he leads by example. And he does get a lot of double teams, which then frees up the other linemen to have greater opportunities to put pressure on the quarterback. Sacks are up across the board. And what Nagy has done is, so my point is that Mack's influence you saw at the very first game. First game of the season, the Bears went up to Lambeau Field, and they were going to get killed. Everyone knew that they were going to get beat. This is a last-place team going up against the Green Bay Packers, who have been beating them continuously. The Bears have not won a division game in like 2 years. So it's like, okay, how bad are we going to lose? Well, it was a very close game that the Bears should have won. They lost by 1 point as Aaron Rodgers came out of the old Willis Reed kind of thing. He came out of the locker room hobbling on a bad knee after he was knocked out in the first half and came back and drove them down the field, and they won by a point. Khalil Mack had an outstanding game, had almost like a career game. He intercepted a pass for a touchdown. He did in one play, he had a sack, stripped fumble, and fumble recovery, all the same play. And suddenly it's like, wow, the Bears are staying with the Packers. In hindsight, the Bears should have beaten the Packers and shouldn't have let Rodgers beat them at the end of the game. But it was like the beginning of like, wait a minute, the Bears may actually be pretty good this year. But, you let that play out. And what happened is as the season progressed this year, they had their ups, their downs. They lost a couple in a row against some decent teams, then won 5 in a row. In their losses, they learned what their weaknesses are. They learned, the coach, Nagy, learned not to put too much on Trubisky's shoulders. I think at the beginning of the season, he was trying to feel Trubisky out, what Trubisky can handle and what he can't handle. I think they've reached now, especially as the season has gone on, they've reached a happy medium of what Trubisky can and can't do, this is Nagy being an offensive coach now, relying on his defense more, running the ball a little bit more, let the defense stop the other team and not have to put so much on Trubisky's shoulders. And so they've progressed as the season has gone on. They've figured out what works and what doesn't work. And here they are, winning the division with 2-3 games left in the season, but continuing to play hard throughout the whole season. They won 4 in a row here at the end. They've won, I think it is 9 out of the last 10 games. So they're on a roll. They helped you guys get in. A lot of people here in Chicago with the last game, there were mixed feelings here. Fans were like, let the Bears lose, and then we'll get to play Minnesota again, because Minnesota's would be a weaker team than the Eagles or whoever the other team might be, because you could see Minnesota imploding. And in fact, in the last game, they were up in Minnesota, and Minnesota had to win to make the playoffs, and they didn't. And you see their quarterback, Cousins, is yelling and screaming at his wide receivers, who are experienced wide receivers. In the last game of the season, they're having communication problems. They're sitting there on the sidelines saying, well, you should have gone up when you, instead of cutting off to the side and all that stuff. And you could see the dysfunctionality that was occurring. And with that dysfunctionality, it was apparent that Minnesota really is heading in the wrong direction. And the Bears won 24-10 to maintain momentum, but also allow you guys to get in. And you guys are in a roll this year now. So we're looking forward to the next game coming up here.
Yeah, I'd have to look at the Eagles season and say overall it was a disappointment. We expected a lot more coming out of a defending Super Bowl champion. And, you know, I guess, I know I was, and I think many of the fans here were just saying, when are they going to start playing like they're capable of playing? In the back of our minds, Carson Wentz, who suffered the knee injury last year, didn't look like the Carson Wentz when he came back. Nick Foles had to open the season. As the season went on, it turns out Wentz had, an injured back. And finally, they decided to shelve him after the second Dallas game. And, you know, a lot of us were just wondering what happened to this team. But I think the resilience and the confidence that they have in themselves has shown, particularly in the last 3 games. But, you know, in the last 6 games, winning 5 out of the last 6. I mean, look, we had a 4-6 start and a humiliating loss to the New Orleans Saints in Week 11, 48-7. That was the worst loss ever by a reigning Super Bowl champion. And to be very honest with you, if they had played the way they were capable of playing, the Eagles should have been 8-2 after Week 10. They lost games in the fourth quarter to Tampa Bay, the Titans, the Vikings, and the Panthers. We win just one of those games, and we're in. You know, we're in. The last 2 losses to the Vikings and the Panthers came at home. Why this problem? Well, the defense was terrible during that stretch, especially the secondary. Yes, there were injuries, and we ended up taking guys off the street to play in that secondary. But to be honest with you, the offense wasn't putting up the same number of points as it had last year when we were putting up 30-plus in some games, close to averaging 20 points a game. Part of that was due to no power running back after we got rid of Blunt in the offseason, and then Jay Ajayi went down in Week 5. Darren Sproles was on the IR. We lacked a deep threat to spread the field until Week 9 when the Birds acquired Golden Tate from Detroit. But I think that loss to the Saints lit a fire because a lot of the veterans challenged their teammates to play to a higher standard, and it worked. I mean, the Eagles are the hottest team in the NFC going into the playoffs. You know, as I said, won 5 of their last 6, including a 30-23 upset over the Rams in LA. You know, and while many of the fans I believe that the team's recent success has been due almost totally to the quarterbacking of Nick Foles, It's more than that. And I don't want to take anything away from Foles. In the last 3 games that he's quarterbacked, he's been sensational. He's completed 77% of his passes. Just last week against the Redskins, he tied an NFL record with 25 consecutive pass completions. And that has built a lot of confidence in the offense, especially when he targets all the receivers, not just 1 or 2, which Wentz was tending to do in his last few games. But Darren Sproles has also returned, and he's been averaging almost 5 yards per carry. Alshon Jeffrey, a former Bear, has been targeted much more by Foles than he was by Wentz. And Jeffrey in the last 3 games has averaged nearly 20 yards per catch with a total of 16 receptions for 301 yards. He's also become the deep threat, making some unbelievable catches. Nelson Aguilar has also picked up his game, and that has allowed the Eagles to control time of possession and give the defense the necessary rest they need to go out and dominate. The defense, to their credit, has picked it up as well. I mean, even the secondary, which has been the Eagles' Achilles heel this season, has learned. And thanks to Malcolm Jenkins, safety has mentored many of these replacements who started to perform much better over the last 6 games, especially Rasul Douglas and Avonte Maddox. I also have to give a lot of credit to the coaches, too, though. Doug Peterson, coming from the Andy Reid school, can be pass-happy at times. But he, to his credit, has listened to his players. The offensive line told him midway through the season that they got to go to the run game more, and he did, and it worked. Defensive coordinator Jim Schwartz was told by Malcolm Jenkins halfway through the season that he had to simplify the defense because of such a young, inexperienced secondary, and that has worked. But, you know, the Eagles' resurgence has been a team effort. It's not just Nick Foles. And they are hitting their stride at the right time. It'll be interesting to see what they do against the Bears, because the 2 players I'm most concerned about, Khalil Mack, you know, going into this game, Nick Foles has injured ribs. I could see Mack just knocking him out of the game if the O-line doesn't protect Foles. And the other guy is Tariq Owens. I mean, he's a deadly threat as a return punt returner and a receiver as well as a running back. So those are my big concerns. So let's look at the breaking down the teams. Let's start with the defense. You want to give it a shot?
The Bears defense?
Yeah, Bears defense and how you see them stack up against the Eagles.
Yeah. I think, well, you pointed out Khalil Mack, and I mentioned that earlier, that he has taken a top 10 defense and turned it into a number 3 defense overall. They lead the league in interceptions because of the improved pass rush. They're 3rd in sacks. They're like 7th in forced fumbles, so they get a lot of turnovers. The defense it stops the run. They're number 1 in stopping the run in the league, only yielding 80 yards per game. They're number 7th in their pass defense. The strength is with the pressure. It is with the defensive line and the interior linebackers stopping the run. And then from there, they tee off on the quarterback. If you attempt to make long, deep throws, you're going to get sacked. What they figured out halfway through the season, after losing a couple of games, to the strategy of short throws with maybe no huddle offense. So they're facing teams that are doing a hurry-up offense, no huddle, keep them on the field, keep them tired, do short throws. They were susceptible to that. What the Bears have done to combat that is jump those routes and not let them get the tip them, intercept them, because they can see it coming. They can see that was a weakness. So that's how they've combated that. I think if the Eagles are able to keep the Bears' defensive line off of Foles, and you mentioned the injury, that's a big deal. And I think the only way the Eagles will be successful is if that offensive line of the Eagles, which is a little banged up, is able to keep the Bears at bay. And I just don't think that's going to happen. I'll be honest with you, because the Eagles' offensive line is banged up. So I think the Bears' defense is going to hold them on the running game, even though Sproles is back, and you're right, has energized that running game for the Eagles. If they can't, if Sproles starts running wild, then the Bears are going to be in trouble, and I think it could be a tough game for the Bears. But if the Bears can contain Sproles, which they've done with every single running back they've faced, and they've faced some of the best ones throughout the season, and then just let the defense tee off on the quarterback, get a couple of turnovers, get a few sacks, it could be a long a day for the Bears, for the Eagles, and a good day for the Bears. So that's how I view the Bears defense. A couple of other guys that come to mind, their interior linemen, unsung type of heroes, are really strong against the run. Eddie Goldman is a real stud in the middle, and Akeem Hicks has become a Pro Bowl player this year. Those are the interior linemen that are really strong. They've got a rookie linebacker, Roquan Smith, who leads the team in tackles. And one of the reasons is the defensive linemen are keeping him clean. Smith is able to roam. He's young, he's quick, he's fast, he's strong, and he roams, and he'll tackle sideline to sideline. And you can't get to him because the defensive line is keeping him clean and not letting the blockers get to that second level and pick him off. And the same thing with the other inside linebacker, Danny Trevathan. Both of them play very similar styles. And the defensive coordinator, Vic Fangio, will release some of them to blitz. So there are blitzes coming from different directions from the linebacker. And then every once in a while, a cornerback may come in from the side. So they disguise their defenses very well. The defensive coordinator, Fangio, is considered one of the best in the league. The best move that the new coach, Matt Nagy, did was to keep Vic Fangio on the team. That was a huge move. Many times new coaches come in and, they've got their own egos. Nagy didn't. He said, stay with us, and Fangio has. And that has really made them a super strong defense. One final point about the defense, and when we talk about offense, same thing on the offense, with the Bears this year and their successes, very few injuries. And when someone does get injured, the next guy up has really stepped in and hasn't missed a beat. So that has been also part of their success. So right now the Bears are pretty strong on defense. Their nickel back is out. That's about the only weakness they've got.
Yeah, I agree with you. The Bears, I think, have a clear edge defensively, and that's a Chicago tradition. I mean, the Bears always seem to put together defensive teams, and defense wins championships. I mean, that's kind of a truism in football. Nick Foles is a pocket passer. You flush him out of the pocket, he's not as effective. And
That's probably interrupt by saying, the Bears know that he doesn't scramble too much. He stays in the pocket. So those guys on the edges can kind of tee off and not worry too much about him scrambling out, and that's because of his bruised ribs. That can be a big danger. So that offensive line of the Eagles are going to have to, and I think that'll also, they're going to have to play well. But I think also Peterson is going to be smart and is going to do a lot of dump-off passes.
Right. Well,
I'll let you analyze your offense against the Bears defense.
Yeah, Mac, it really scares me. He's going to give the O-line, the Eagles O-line, a lot of trouble, not just because of his physicality, but his agility. And, as you pointed out, the Bears, I think, also have an advantage at linebacker. Those linebackers, Trevathan in particular, has forced more turnovers than for Adam Hicks or Kruger Hill for the Eagles, and that's what has won a lot of games for Chicago, forcing turnovers on defense. And obviously the Bears have a better secondary, and that's why they're ranked third overall in the NFL. I mean, only the Ravens and Bills have a better defense, and the Bears are ranked first against the rush, while the Eagles' defense is ranked 23rd. Now on the other hand, the Eagles and Bears have a very similar offensive scheme. A lot of zone reads, RPOs, screen passes, probably more plays than any other teams in the NFL. The offense has been described as positionless. That is, running backs like the Eagles' Darren Sproles and the Bears' Tariq Cohen can also be receivers. In fact, I think Cohen is your leading receiver, isn't he?
I would have to look that up. Allen Robinson is really the number one receiver, but Robinson has been injured and out for 3 or 4 games. He will be coming back. He's been out for the last 2 games, and he missed 2 other games during the season. So he is a true wide receiver. He's an excellent wide receiver, came from the Jaguars, brand new this year, another one of these unsung heroes that the GM picked up. And so really he is the first option on many passing plays, not Cohen. But Cohen coming out of the backfield or starting in the backfield and then lining up on the outside is a nightmare for linebackers to cover. And
he is your leading receiver. 71 catches for 725 yards and 5 TDs. And he's dangerous as a punt returner. I mean, he might be a better punt returner.
He is. He's not quite in the Devin Hester category, but when you watch him play, he reminds you of Devin Hester. In fact, actually, he's a better offensive player than Devin Hester ever was. He's nowhere near as good a punt returner as Hester. Hester is maybe the best of all time, but he's a better offensive player. He's quite athletic. He's got this crazy video. Look it up, Tariq Cohen. This video that he released before the draft, before he was drafted a couple of years ago, where 2 balls are thrown at him. He jumps in the air, grabs each ball one-handed, catches it, and does a backflip at the same time, landing on his feet with now 2 balls in his arms. You got to see it to believe it, really. But it just
having said all that, though, I still give the edge to the Eagles offensively, and here's why. Yes, the O-line has been banged up, but they've also been locked down in recent weeks, and it's not unusual for Kelsey and Lane Johnson to play hurt. And that right side has been extremely effective, particularly in the last 6 games. And I say that realizing that the Bears' O-line ranks 9th in terms of the fewest sacks allowed. But I think the Eagles' O-line will rise to the occasion. A tight end, I don't think Trey Burton, by the way, a former Eagle, is nowhere near the caliber of Zach Ertz. As you probably know, he's set a record for tight ends with 116 receptions this year. The Eagles are also, I believe, stronger quarterback with Nick Foles simply because he's battle-tested. Yes, the statistical comparison between Foles and Trubisky are pretty similar, 95-plus passer ratings. But again, Foles was the MVP of last year's Super Bowl, and he's playing at the top of his game right now. And this is going to be Trubisky's first ever high-pressure playoff game. The only area where I really give the Bears a slight edge offensively is at running back with Cohen and Jordan Howard. Both of them, I think, are exceptional out of the backfield. But still, with our receivers, Nelson Aguilar, Alshon Jeffrey in particular, both of them are deep threats. Spread the field. And Golden Tate, by the way, has the most playoff experience of any of the wide receivers on either team. So I got to go with that. I think the key there is what we said. If Foles can stay in the game and Mack or anybody else on that Bears defense doesn't get to him. Special teams. What do you think?
For the Bears?
Yeah.
One name. Parkey, the kicker. The other special teams are the decent punter, decent return game, nothing outstanding. But the place kicker, Parkey. If he makes them, great. But he has hit many, many posts. He's hit, I think, 5 field goal, between extra points and field goals, he's hit 5 posts, and all of them bounced no good. So what does that tell you? Well, he's darn close. He's not missing it by much, but he's been inconsistent. And a lot of people here in Chicago are concerned really about 2 things. Will Trubisky not get too nervous? And the hope is that Nagy can control it with the type of play calling that he'll do. But will Parkey not get nervous and miss field goals? Because in the playoffs, a missed field goal, a missed extra point can be the difference in the game. It has not hurt the Bears in the losses so far this year. They had 4 losses this year. They overcome all of those misses. All those misses came in the games that they won. So it hasn't really hurt the Bears, but everyone around here is just worried about Cody Parkey, the field goal kicker for the Bears. All the other aspects of the special teams is solid, not outstanding. We don't have a Devin Hester type, even though Cone, you're right, looks the part, but we haven't had a return for a touchdown, and that's the makeup of the game this year. Because of the rule changes, you're not going to be able to return kicks for touchdowns as much as before because of the nature of what they've done to protect players and hopefully reduce the number of violent collisions. But it focuses on Parkey for the Bears.
Yeah, I think that's what it comes down to for the Eagles as well. Jake Elliott has been clutch anywhere from the 45-yard line and in, although he has missed some extra points this year. He's not as inconsistent as Parkey, who, by the way, is another former Eagle. Parkey has missed 7 field goals this season as well as 3 extra points. Elliott has been better than that. I think Cameron Johnson, who ranks 3rd in the NFL in punting, is slightly better than Pat O'Donnell is. The average yards on their punt is 48 to 45. Where the Bears excel is going to be in returns. Again, Cohen. He was elected to the Pro Bowl as a return specialist. So if the Eagles lose this game, I think that Cohen's going to end up being the difference maker. What's your prediction?
I think the Bears are going to win because I think Nagy, the coach, will manage the offense. Trubisky has a tendency to scramble, which can really hurt a defense, and that's something that the Eagles are going to have to look for. But if Trubisky can manage the game and not have too many turnovers, I think the Bears defense is going to put in a solid performance. Yeah, I think the Bears are going to win. They're, I believe, 5.5-point favorites. I don't know about that. I think the Eagles bring enough offensive firepower, and I think it's going to be a fascinating game between the 2 head coaches who are friends, who text throughout the season. They came up both in the Eagles organization. Nagy actually was born and raised in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. So,
right.
There's a lot of ties with him and Pennsylvania and Philadelphia. Raised in the Philly organization with Andy Reid. Both went to Kansas City. So they both know under Reid, of course, and they both know each other really well. So it's going to be interesting what the play calls are going to be, what information they've shared with their defensive coordinators about the other and the other's tendencies. But it's a similar kind of offense. There'll be a couple of gadget plays in here. I almost guarantee it. Nagy has pulled one out almost every other game. There's another gadget type of play where a defensive player will come in and come in for like a 2-point conversion or a goal line stand or something like that, which is fun and has been successful. But I think the Bears are going to win. Score, 23-20, something like that.
That's fascinating. I picked the same score, but the Eagles come out on top. Las Vegas favors the Bears by 6. You favor them by 5.5. I'm going to take the Eagles by 3, 23-20, but only if Nick Foles manages to go unscathed and the Birds avoid turnovers, which is the Bears' strong suit.
Yep.
And the reason I say that, the Eagles are battle tested. They've been through this last year. They were underdogs all the way through. They're an underdog now. I think they're going to surprise people. I really do. Well, listen, thanks for being with us, Bill, and thank the Bears for getting us that 6th seed. I know you'll understand if I don't wish you good luck on Sunday, but this has been a pleasure.
Thanks, Bill. It's always fun. I would normally wish you good luck, but I won't. And hopefully the Bears will win and move forward into the playoffs. But this will be a fun game, and let's stay in touch during the game, okay?
All right. And thank you, Philly fans, for tuning in. See you next week for another podcast of Philadelphia baseball, past, present, and personal. This is Bill Kashatus, rounding third and heading home on the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network.
The proceeding was a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production. Thank you for listening.